some slides, only because I think it will help structure the next 40 minutes or so, but I'll try not to stick to them too much. And I'm not always a great enthusiast in terms of doing these kind of things online, but needs must with us. And I think we're quite a small group, which is quite nice as well. So hopefully this will work. So let's have a go and share the screen. And I sound like my nan telling myself instructions out loud. So sorry. Step 1, find the button. Oh, is that sharing screen?
Yes, I see it. Yep, I've got it.
It's very exciting. All right, hang on. Let's get on to it. So is that in? Oh, can you see that? Not in slide mode, in slideshow mode. No, let's do it from the beginning. There we go. Right, that should be better. Is that better? Or no? Now has it gone weird? That's better, isn't it? I can see. I can just see at the bottom of the screen what I can see, what you can see, hopefully. I've gone with the kind of, and again, the topic area, as I just mentioned, is kind of holding that high risk operational line, the management considerations that you need to, I suppose, face most days actually in the services that you are working with. Is there anybody that feels that that is not something that resonates with your role at the moment, even if you're doing prevention work? No. Okay, so it comes in some form, probably a lot in prevention and diversion work, actually. Hopefully we'll cover a little bit of that. So what we're going to try and do is reframe high risk through a child first lens. And when I say high risk, I'm doing that shorthand that us in the job do. High risk of serious harm to others, high risk of harm to self, high risk of reoffending, and using that kind of shorthand. Identify one shift for you in terms of decision making and how you operate as a manager. And then hopefully just start to think about how you might strengthen your confidence in defensible child-centred practice. So we'll have a little go at starting that off. By the way, if anyone puts their hand up, just shout. Can you just do old school and pretend we're sitting in the same room? Because I can't see very well. So just interrupt me. So first of all, I would say, and you know I'm going to say this, is in terms of for you guys, if you are all confident in the broader risk context, and that is the child first versus risk management, kind of, you know, the debates that exist around when asset came out. You know, we went through a big kind of ideological shift, probably back in the 90s now, where we went from kind of Labour days as well, when the Crime and Disorder Act came in, that kind of focus on the individual, focus on kind of scoring, understanding risk triggers, and then looking at dosage. You know, you remember scaled approach, all those kind of things latterly. Do most of you have some confidence in that space? I don't know why I'm asking you because I can't see you. Let's assume if you don't have to declare, but if you feel like, oh my gosh, yes, I did, and I did that years ago when I was at college, or I did that years ago when I was on a course, or I'm all over it, then fantastic. All I would point you back to are some articles which do a little bit of the job for you in terms of summarizing where some of that dilemma comes from. And I would say that, so firstly, if you feel comfortable and confident with that kind of journey and the kind of the debates that have happened in this area, then you're already off to a bit of a winner. That doesn't mean necessarily that you feel we've overcome them. But what it does mean, I think, is legitimizes some of the conversations that you will have with yourself when you're thinking at night, thinking, oh my goodness, have I done the right thing? Or could we have done more? Should we have breached this child, etc., etc. And also with your team. So I guess what I would say it shows you is you're not alone in that dilemma, that dichotomy, that ongoing debate. And I would say that whilst that was kind of raging quite a lot in the 90s, and you then saw that with different approaches, it hasn't gone away. But there's a lot of material back in those kind of articles there. And the one highlighted in blue is well, some of these are in your workbook, plug for the workbook, but they're really helpful as well. So all I would say is make yourself feel a bit more confident about that if you can, but also check about your staff's understanding as well around that. And because as I said, it does legitimize, it's okay to be a bit confused about this. And as we'll come on to discuss, I'm sure that debate is absolutely still happening at the moment. The second thing I think for you as operational managers will be do the service tools, the assurance processes and staff skills and knowledge provide you with confidence. So if you're unsure about how these work, how these are being kind of promoted, the processes, the procedures, are they out of date? Do staff actually understand them? What really is our service kind of stance on these kind of things? Have my staff got the skills that they need, etc., etc.? There's a lot in that sentence, but if you're not confident or if you're not sure where you might need to have improvements, that is going to undermine your ability as a manager and a leader in this space, because staff will, as you know, turn around to you and say, well, our processes haven't been updated for the last 5 years, or why does our quality assurance not even look at this, or etc., etc. So or conversely, yeah, well, you're all over it, so you can turn back to these tools and say, use them, they're there for you, you can use them. The next thing, a kind of almost a bit of a checklist to establish against your own confidence, would be around, do you have yourself, try not to guffaw too much, but space for reflective practice for you and your team? That confidence and professional safety to share the dilemmas and gain support. So those are the kind of frank conversations which I'm sure you all have, where you go, actually, I'm going home a bit scared about this, or I'm not too sure. And I know this child's, for example, had lots of trauma in their life, but I'm really worried that they're going to go off and do X, Y, Z. So line management, team meetings, are there feedback routes? Do you pick that up in QA? Because again, if staff and yourself are not able to find a safe space to say you don't feel comfortable, you're unsure, you feel a bit out of your depth, then again, it's going to undermine your confidence. I know that's easier said than done as a manager. I really do appreciate that. And as a new manager, sometimes it's hard to admit that. But you are, I'm sure, all being placed in quite accountable positions now. Wherever you're sitting in the chain, you need to be able to feel confident to have that, be able to give that feedback. And as a consequence of that, you don't have to just say, I feel out of my depth. You can say, I do feel a little bit out of my depth or whatever, but if I did X or you provided me with Y, then that would help me. So looking for solutions as well. The next one would be around, are there appropriate and specialist interventions and support available for you? So can you get access to, for example, sorry, the joys of dogs ownership, sorry about that, sexualized behaviour intervention, the equivalent of things like tier 3 or 4 services. Sorry, I'm going to stop for a moment. Have you got access to those kind of services? If you haven't, again, and I often hear that around the sexualized behaviour is often quite a difficult space in order to get support. I'll stop in a minute and take some conversations. And then finally, I would say, are there appropriate governance, accountability and multi-agency support arrangements in place? So does your management board regularly, or sorry, even before that, do you as a management team talk about the kind of cases that you're most concerned about, and why. Are you able to then look for extra support in those conversations? Have you got on-call arrangements, for example? Have you got a comms team that you could lean on if somebody hits the local press, etc.? So are those supports there? Does it go up to the management board? So you might have an AD from Children's Services sitting on that board. Do you know that the right people are going to hear about what your concerns are? Those being the questions. Okay, so a little bit of a question then for us, and just some reflections on some of that. When a child is labelled high risk, what changes and how we respond? Over to the floor. Any type of risk, any type of high risk.
Well, we have oh, go on.
I was just going to say referral to MAPA.
Okay, good. So you've got procedures. Yeah.
We would bring our multi-agent risk management meetings to it. So if they've already got, I mean, if a child is labelled high risk, that means we have our MAM meetings. So the multi-agency meetings where school, social care, education, or anyone who comes to that health, and we basically discuss that risk and how best to risk assess it and safety plan it.
Okay. Again,
Yeah.
so you've got some like specific processes that you will bring in to take a different approach for that child. Okay, cool.
Police sit on our management. I'm not sure if everyone else has the same, but like YJ police sit on ours. We also have like top three. Sometimes where we have sort of intel come through. If we get any intel about, say, the most high risk young people, we'll have information that'll come straight through from our YJ police to manager, case manager kind of thing as well.
So you've got some specialist support in there. So you've got those people to be able to escalate to, which is great. So it's not just a process. You've got bodies, as it were, that are committed to that space. That's great.
We also have children who we're concerned about lists that get sent to our head of service and then our director, just so that there's oversight at a high level.
Interesting. And what would that be? What would trigger? What does that mean for you? Is that anything above, over than what you would have in asset documentation or etc.? What is it for you? What's your threshold?
In terms of who will be put on the list?
Yeah.
I think it got a bit out of control because it was getting longer and longer and longer. And so as a management team, we actually say, let's actually look at the children that we are most concerned about. It's not because we're concerned about a lot of our children. So it's kind of ones that have got the imminent kind of risk going on for them, whether it's safety and wellbeing concerns or concerns to others.
Yeah, we do similar, but we don't do it for high risk. We only do that for the very high, is when we will take it further. So we've done it recently for one of my young people where we've taken it to directors and basically informed them why somebody is very high in terms of like, it was their safety and well-being. So the risk to them was imminent. We thought it was going to happen any day, basically. But we only do it for our very high risk. Our high risk, I think, like Jazz just said, I feel like it would just be a little bit crazy if we did it for all the high risk kids.
And is that because as well, if I tell more people, it might make me feel a bit better, but also there's a little bit of I don't know,
shared responsibility.
It's a share on a positive sense.
I was going to say, I feel like we don't really want to share it because that's when we start getting people on our backs asking us, why are you doing this? Why are they doing that? And it's a bit like, oh God, just let us manage it.
Love that.
But
okay,
I think with us, isn't it? I don't know if this happens with Jazz, but usually they're open to social care too. So it's like the AD and social care and our, so it's I think it, like you said, shared responsibility, that we're all aware of these risks if it is criminality, but how it's then going to impact social care at the same time. I think we have a lot of like discussions as well with if someone's coming up to court, we'll have like a pre-discussion and like what kind of packages we can put in place. Like we have a lot of ISS bail packages as well through Manchester, so we have those. We're linking social services quickly with those kind of meetings as well.
Do you think in terms of not just practical though, but how do you think kind of the whole response or stance to that child, let's just say high risk, very high risk versus not, how the kind of focus might shift on those children?
I think you with all of them, but maybe more so what's happened to this child. I think you do a more of that analysis, don't you, in terms of the 4Ps kind of psychological framework, although we do with all of them. But if they're high risk, you think, right, what, rather than kind of go straight into risk management and controls, what is it that's happened to this child to make them high
Nice.
risk?
Yeah,
I
good.
think.
Yeah, no, great. That's really helpful, because I think some of broadly speaking, behaviourally, this is what we can end up sort of finding ourselves doing, which is slipping into more of an enforcement focus, because of course that comes with concern and worry. You have a shared responsibility for public protection, etc. There could be less tolerance, because that then twins in there, doesn't it, with it, with we can't afford to give more opportunities, potentially, as I'm saying, and we already touched on that, more scrutiny. So it's all of those things come together, and that can drive us away from child first, when it, in reality, as you absolutely just said, it should drive us more towards it. So we should be then thinking, what has happened? What more assessment do we need to do? Is that kind of, I mean, these are broad kind of considerations, but can you see that kind of cultural shift in your services to a degree, in your management approach? It's not necessarily a bad thing. I just think it's more, it just becomes hyper vigilant, doesn't it? It's a certain way of working, and in the nature of the work that we're doing, but it's difficult to ignore that. But
I was just going to say, in terms of like child first, we would up our contacts and try and push them towards more positive activities and stuff like that. So although you've got like that kind of like the legal kind of framework, you've got to follow those policies and stuff, we would also maybe do more like either visual check-ins, or if again that doesn't really, it's not appropriate for the child and we need to be a lot more child first, it might be that we do phone check-ins, FaceTimes, text messages more often a week, have a look at what activities we can push them into. So like at the minute, one of the young people we've got can't come into the town centre. It's too high risk. So we're having a look at where he's living, what kind of positive activities can we push him to do that would keep him safe rather than putting him at risk. So like we do all our sessions now at the home rather than doing them in our office, because it's just not safe for him. So now we're looking at education, employment, positive activities, gym memberships, things like that, where he's living.
Great. And that, do you find that your staff naturally go to that space, or is that because
I think so. Yeah, I think we're quite good at being able to manage risk and actually prioritize the child's needs and safety. Like, it's meant to be a combination of the two, isn't it? Although the child might not necessarily agree with what it is we're doing and might not be able to see why we're doing it. It's still a mixture of the two in terms of like following policies, but also being child first.
Can you see elements of either colleagues you work with or seniors or specialists? Do you see that it's more rigid, but as in enforcement, less tolerance, more scrutiny? Do you see that in parts of your service or part of your delivery model?
Yeah, I would probably suggest. Yeah, we probably do. To be fair, yeah, I'll probably say we would. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm thinking about maybe probation officers that might be. Again, she says CAFORing, if you've still got any probation officers within your service, that kind of high risk management training and approach and experience, maybe policing colleagues, but also senior leaders that might not have a background in youth justice or social work, etc., or new senior leaders. I'm not asking you to out anybody, but that kind of level of I suppose unpredictability can lend us towards that space. And I'm sure you're all well, I know you enough now pretty much to know that you are aware of this and try to, but it's basically saying, as a manager, are we, with our most high risk young people, slipping into this approach? It's a really good way perhaps to reflect with your team sometimes on what you're doing. Okay, so what happens if we do fall into that trap? So of course, high risk is high uncertainty equals often high anxiety. And as you all know, absolutely inside out and upside down, they're going to be the children with the most trauma, the least stability, and the weakest relationships. And then we become the most anxious about them. And I suppose it's remembering kind of those kind of core mantras, those things like risk is not something you can control, but we can seek to reduce it and understand it through relationships and through assessments which inform those relationships. And that child first is risk management. It's not separate from it. So I think in those moments of, oh, you know, when you've got the local police colleagues, and again, I say this, you know, straight up with no tone to it, saying, you know, this child needs to be breached, or you've got custodial colleagues that are saying to you, you know, you need way more license conditions on this child, etc., etc., etc. It's just going, okay, let's just reflect, let's have a stand back, in order to do that test. It may then be that you go, you know what, they are in our top 3, and on this occasion we're going to have to up our concerns. Does anybody feel that dilemma in other areas of practice, in terms of getting that? Where do you get that balance? Is it hard to get that balance? Oh, BB.
Sorry, wasn't that going to go first?
No, that's fine. You
Okay. No, I was just going to say one of the things that I noticed, which is a bit of an issue for us, is where there's like a risk of harm to like a victim, there doesn't seem to be sort of much like this is what we can do to safeguard the victim. It's almost like we just say kind of report it to the police, and sometimes, like, for example, if like there's no restraining order in place or there's no contact, or it's just a really hard one, because unless there's like a specific measure already put in when they went to court, there isn't anything you can put in whilst you're working with a child during an order, I feel like. I don't know if that's what other people think.
Anyone else come across that, or emerging risks through the course of an order or an intervention, and how you've responded to that? I suppose it's having those escalation points as well, isn't it? And making sure that that feeds back. Look, we're doing the best that we absolutely can do in these circumstances, senior police colleagues, for argument's sake, but we can see risks escalating. I mean, obviously you can link that into breach, can't you? I know you don't want to, but, and then for to add extra maybe conditions or part of their interventions. But yeah, I can absolutely understand that. Okie dokie. I think that victim engagement is really difficult. So in terms of, for you, reflecting on your service, just mull this over. How are your service or team processes influenced by risk? Does that sit well with you? Does anyone have like, is anywhere that's less child first, and are there any areas that you could change? So let's have a think about any teams that you manage or you work alongside. Do you have teams or services linked into risk? High risk teams or transition teams, or anything like that, or practitioners that might take more of a lead with high risk cases?
We have practitioners that would take more of a lead in high risk cases. So myself and Paige are the senior prac, so we would often take high risk. Our probation worker would also take high risk cases. We have it's quite difficult really, because we have our statutory case managers who do the statutory court orders, and then we have the out of court and the prevention team. However, if there are quite high risk children who are in the out of court prevention team, a lot of the time a statutory case manager will take on that young person, or they can get moved around. I know that's maybe not necessarily child first, moving them around and changing that case manager, but we might add a secondary worker on there as like a backup, so that a child has another face to get to know who is more equipped with dealing with high risk cases. Do you know what I mean? If you've got a case manager maybe is not as experienced, but you want to maintain that relationship that they've got, you'll add a secondary worker who will also build a relationship, who are more equipped to deal with the risk assessing and the safety planning.
Perfect. Yeah, that sounds great. So again, they're real kind of tangibles that you can say, awful as it is, but does anybody do that? Has anyone had these conversations where, imagine if it was on the front page, or in my day, I'm sure it is, imagine the Daily Mail headline, switch to the, are we doing the best that we can? Is there anything else we can do without being contentious about papers? Because if you're in, read daily marks. But yeah. So do you ever have those kind of tests between you? Are you able to have those kind of conversations? Do you have those conversations?
Yes, with children's services, I find as challenging, is this defensible? Is this defensible
Right.
decision making? And we
Yes.
have to be, quite challenging with them. I think in terms of less child first, children's services and housing, I think, are the main ones that are far less child first
Okay.
when it comes to our high risk people, in my
So
experience.
more kind of strategic partners rather
Yeah.
than staff that are directly within your influence, I suppose.
Yeah.
That's where you're finding that kind of dilemma.
I feel like in terms of, I suppose, what team do we have? We have an ISS and court team that specifically deals with those kind of risk kids that are coming through on the ISS bail or ISS YRO orders. And so I'm in that team. The processes and stuff we do, I feel like we do that. Is this defensible? We do sort of think about, like what I was saying, that this kid's probably going to come through court. So and so, they've been arrested. It's a high risk case. It's already in the papers. So you do have those thoughts. And I think in terms of us, we work well, like I say, with partners, but I suppose it wouldn't be a person or the team or anything. It'd be the police, because you're always going to get those kind of, this is what we're going, this is that. But I think what we're finding anyway, I suppose, across the city is education. They'll just shut us down, exclude a kid, and that's what we try to then get them back into, or try to, I don't know, divert them away, like we were saying, add more things around it, give them more support. But I mean, a lot of these young people potentially, like we've said, there'll be, what's gone on in the past. So we've got like mental health teams and stuff. So we'll try and add like a SALT diagnosis. But what we'll find is a lot of the doors will get slammed back to us. So that'll not help, I suppose.
So you're having to navigate the kind of terminology, the language, the reassurance to what's bolting on around this child when you're trying to get services outside of your influence directly, as it were,
100%,
to
work with them.
Yeah, and that's tough, isn't it? Because they're going to be even more reactionary to those previous slides, which is like, anxious, no nonsense approach. If they don't come in, we'll offer them one chance, they're out. It's that kind of thing, because the anxiety level.
We get a lot of that specifically with harmful sexualised behaviour. We get a lot of schools coming to us with children under the age of 10 saying they're showing harmful sexualised behaviours, and we're thinking, well, actually, hang on a minute, they're under 10. Do you know what I mean? Is it harmful or is it problematic? Like, what are they being exposed to at home? Rather than trying to criminalise a child and get them involved in youth justice, social care needs to go away and really unpick the family dynamics, the safety planning in the home and stuff. What's the child being exposed to? They display those behaviours, because, do you know what I mean? We're saying that they're under 10 years old. So again, it's that challenging the terminology and being more child first rather than being punitive, I think.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah, and I think we've noticed as well with that we've got a child here who was he was convicted of sexually harmful behaviour, but he was at the school and they were aware of his behaviour for over a year before he got to court. And they were fine with him, no problems. He was attending classes. As soon as he was convicted, and because the nature of the offence was actually he's a registered sex offender now, they binned him, because and when we've had meetings with them to try and change this, what they're interested in optics. What happens if the local community finds out we've got a registered sex offender at the school? And we've escalated this through our NEAT manager and all sorts of stuff, and there's various people trying to bring pressure on the school, if you like, because the AIM assessment shows that actually his risk at school is really low, and as I say, the offence itself was 2.5 years ago, and he was at school, and the school knew about his offence for at least a year. And it was only when he became registered that they went, he's too high risk for us to handle, which is quite nonsense, because they were handling him absolutely fine up until his conviction. And like saying earlier on, that the problems with risk isn't necessarily with our services, it's with the perception of other services. You know, this school has brought their they've gone to legal on it. Their legal department, who basically they're doing everything to block this child from getting back to school. We've done safety planning with them. We have done, you know, our NEAT manager has actually been to the school and he's looked at all the areas, and he's been really heavily involved in it. And then in one of our latest safety and harm prevention meetings, they said, oh yeah, we're going to slowly in September, we're going to review it every 2 weeks, and if everything's going well every 2 weeks, he will end up on a full-time timetable. There's no reason why he shouldn't be on a full-time timetable immediately. Do you know what I mean?
They're going slow for them. They're going slow for them, aren't they?
They're going
Not
slow
the
for them,
child.
but this child's been remote tutoring since April. No, in fact, sorry, since February. And it's the isolation is having quite an impact on him. So the thing that they're not thinking about the child at all. They're thinking about what will it look like if the public finds out.
Yeah.
And they're an academy. They're an academy as well. So you know, there's no local authority kind of input to them.
No.
So it's really disheartening because there's a lot of people recognizing through the aim assessment, through all the other safety plans and so on and so forth, actually this risk is manageable. And they were managing that risk, as I say, up until the point that he was convicted. But as soon as that happened, they're out. So in terms of, you know, how risk influences sort of like our reaction to it, very often I think it's the reaction of partner agencies that are the problem, and not us. Do you know what I mean?
And it's playing that back, isn't it, to them in a hopefully in a supportive stakeholder way rather than a blame way. And I think that's difficult because you deal with this all the time. You know, how many people have you, again, I've said this before, but you tell people what you do very loosely, probably in a party or something you've met from the first time, and they go, I don't know how you do that. Or they instantly come out with some kind of opinion. And exactly, how many times you go, yeah, me neither. You know, actually, because and I suppose what this conversation is all about really is acknowledging that you are in, you know this, I'm sure, but your position is pretty unique, other than I suppose in similar, you know, similar settings like, I don't know, secure settings or you know, residential high risk mental health settings. There's not many professions, if you like, that have to deal with this uncertainty and manage it, but you are actually battling against others that are having quite a natural gut reaction to this, and it's how you get support and you've got people to go to as managers, because all of a sudden, what have you done about this, Alan? What have you done about this? You know, so
well, that's all well documented, so we're all right. But
and
again,
all right,
it's the obstacles. I mean,
absolutely,
it's being escalated because it is felt that it is
unfair.
As I say, if the school hadn't already been controlling or managing those perceived risks, and he's no more risky now than he was then. It's purely the registration that is scaring them.
It feels ridiculous, doesn't it? Absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Well, decision making under pressure for you guys as well. I don't know if you find yourself in this position where you're often asked to make kind of quick decisions, or whether you do have that opportunity to breathe, get some advice or whatever. But I guess some reminders for you, particularly in an operational management role. Can you ask yourselves, what is the evidence versus the assumption? So have we taken a breath? Do we know? Is it fear that's creeping through? So what is the urgency, risk or fear? What does this child need to be safer? And will this reduce or escalate risk in the long term? And it always reminds me of those kind of, and it's difficult, isn't it, that Friday afternoon scenario. But sometimes you just have to do what you have to do to stop a child being homeless, or et cetera, et cetera. But be honest with ourselves. Which of these do we skip when we're most under pressure? Any reflections on that? Thinking back to anything recently where you've gone, God, yeah. You're obviously very calm and reflective. That's very good. I'm impressed. I think it's always good though to remember, and it might not be with you, it might be with practitioners that you're working with. Absolutely, just get them to reflect on that and go, what's the issue here? Okay, we've only got a little bit of time left. But so leadership and culture for you guys as managers in your own right, and your members obviously of wider management groups. You've got a role as leaders to shape whether teams they default to defensive practice, or do they deliver relational risk management. So how can we work our way with this child out of these risks, or how can we actively at least reduce some of these risks rather than resorting to closing down engagement, maybe breach, etc., or it doesn't even have to be legal or formal in that response. But is it altering what you might be offering? Like, I don't know, no home visits versus office visits, etc. Trying to remember that staff fear equals more restrictive decisions at times. Manager confidence will obviously on the reverse of that offer more balanced decisions. And also, do you need a leadership shift? And that's not necessarily with you, but amongst your other senior pracs or staff that might be experienced. Be curious before you're being restrictive. So asking yourself, but also asking them to reflect on that. Really good good questions to pose in a team meeting or an away day or something like that. So what would I say to you? And you always love me giving you a little bit of homework, but what's one thing that you will do differently this week? So what I would ask you to do is just reflect on your services high risk management approach. Does it feel comfortable? Is it in date? Does it resonate with how colleagues in neighbouring authorities or boroughs, etc., are following their approach? Is there something a little bit out of kilter, or do you feel like you're up to speed? One of the workshops we had the other day was around the new offences that have just come in, the online sexual offences that we were talking about. Has the policy caught up with that, for argument's sake? So just being mindful of those kind of things. Do visit your workbook. Look at it's not just in the risk management section, it's in the quality assurance, it's in the leadership, it's there, and it's there to help. So do have a little if there's one thing you did this week. The other things that you might want to do, and again, it sounds like, and I'm sure that you're kind of all over this, but high risk language. Any examples of what that might be, or that you're not comfortable with?
I had somebody recently compare a child that was just found in possession of a knife to akin to like the Southport incident.
Okay. So that is a very powerful and current analogy, isn't it? And again, linked down into fear. Taking a breather. So what do we mean by this?
Yeah, 100%.
There are routes. There are routes that we need to go down. Slow down the decisions, reintroduce the child's voice. Does the child, again, I'm sure, but do you as managers ask your staff, does the child understand their risk status? What does this mean? Does this mean that they're not being seen at home? Does this mean that they're with ISS? Does this mean that, how does the child know what they need to do to reduce the risk? And then what does that mean for them in terms of, I don't know, being allowed back to school more frequently, or etc. And is there enough support for staff to tolerate the uncertainty as well? It's high risk. This is the staff wellbeing space for you and staff, isn't it? It's a lot. It's a lot to ask. So as a little bit of a takeaway, really, remembering the child first risk lens, what's happened to this child, you said this right at the beginning, what matters to them, what strengths exist, and how can safety be built with them, and thinking about that. Oh, sorry. And then the goal isn't to eliminate risk, it's to reduce harm by understanding the child better than the behaviour. I think is a nice little missive to remember there. So whistle stop tour, guys, and I think I am thoroughly impressed by all of the things you come out with, because you're like, yeah, we're doing it. You don't say it like this, but you're a step head, it sounds like, the vast majority, if not all of the time. However, these are the bits, these are the areas that cause you the pressure. And if you were working in with some of the kids from Hampshire, you know, there will have definitely been conversations at the end of the day where people are going, did we do the right thing? Did we assess it properly? Except, you know, whatever. But that self-doubt, that critique, that reassurance, you'll all have those cases, I'm sure, within either now or in your past, where you've done those reflections. But it can chip away and take it out of you, as you know, because it's not just those obvious cases, it's the ones that creep through. So yeah, I'd urge you just to have a little bit of reflection and absorb that over a strong cup of coffee afterwards. But hope that was useful, a little bit of thought-provoking, and yeah, I'm sure you've all got to shoot off. But any quick questions or anything? I'll send through the slides so you can have a look at those, and I'll send it to the others as well. Whilst I've got you, very quickly, so we come back together on the 14th. I will get out of July. I will get out the details for that this week. I'm not going to say today because I'm also doing the AOAM bulletin, which is not finished, which has got to be out tomorrow. So I will get that out to you ASAP. But if there's no other questions or anything, I'll let you go on to 1 minute over. 1 minute
Thanks,
over.
Lisa. Bye,
All right, guys.
everyone.
Lovely to see you.
Thank
See you
you.
soon.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Lisa.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Try.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye.